What's going on, everybody? It is Lauren deLisa Coleman with another edition of the Inside series for Filmio during South by Southwest. We have so much more to bring you, and so much more even in this episode to bring you. I am just really excited about any film with the title Gay Haircut. You know, has got to be like just a whole like roller coaster of scenarios, right? I have the director with me, who is the force behind Gay Haircut, which is part of the fab lineup of South by Southwest Film Festival. And I want you to join me in welcoming Jude Harris. Jude, thanks so much for taking out time to be able to talk with us here at the Inside series.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So excited to get into this. We always start by asking our filmmakers to give a synopsis for our viewers. So could you do that, please, for me for Gay Haircut?
Yeah, so Gay Haircut is the story of Krista Fatka, who is my partner and a stand-up comic, rebranding. She's spent most of her career as a comic, as a straight-passing woman, and then she started dating a trans woman and needed to retire all her dick jokes and fully come out as bisexual. And this is about that haircut.
The haircut, which kind of symbolizes all that and more, right?
Right.
So much like to get into, because I mean, I think hair is just like so much anyway, right? And then, you know, when you kind of address it in this manner, it's just like some of it's like just hysterical, you guys. How did you decide to actually, you know, bring this to life? And how did you and Krista get together?
Well, it's so funny because it's like, oh, how did you start collaborating? And it's like, the answer is Tinder.
No way.
Yeah. So we're a COVID. And yeah. We didn't, cool. You know, we just met and thought, you know, each other were cool. And then, you know, I think she's hilarious. I'd seen her stand up online, and, you know, it's such an LA like relationship rite of passage to be like, hey, will you read my script? And, you know, it ended up that she's a hysterical writer. She's really funny. And so we just started to collaborate on this. And really, she just wanted to do, you know, I think when she first had the idea, she was anemic. She was losing some hair. She's like, I just need to like go ahead and do the Gay Haircut, rebrand. You know, my kids were around. She's like, well, maybe we'll just have your kids give me a haircut and we'll have somebody fix it later and do that as an Instagram video. And I was like, no, let's get Zach Holmes, who plays the hairstylist, who's also one of the stars of Jackass Forever. Let's get him to do it. He and I had created a show together called Too Stupid to Die. And I was like, you know, I've been wanting to direct something with Zach in it for a long time. And, you know, let's do something where like you get your haircut, you know, Zach can do something where he's not hurting himself. She wrote the script.
Unless the scissors go the wrong way. But yeah. If not,
it's not my fault. I'm not asking him to hurt himself.
Right.
And then she wrote the script and it all just kind of snowballed from there.
Just so much of a crack up. And I was hoping that she might like jump in for a second, but she isn't because isn't able to, I guess. But, you know, when I was just reading a bit, you know, prepping for this interview, the whole like circus in Palestine, like as her background, like that's, I mean, what she's a full on acrobat and everything, right? But not just any circus and not Cirque du Soleil, but a circus, you know, in Palestine. And then from that into comedy. How did that whole transition happen? It's got to be a scream, like just hanging out with her, no?
It is. And, you know, she is somebody who has really extracted the maximum value from her life. You know,
that's a good way to put it.
I admire it so much. I've been so conventional and I've always worked like an office job and I've always been, you know, like kind of right down the middle. And, you know, she's like when we started dating and she's talking about Circus and she's talking about, you know, hopping a train and going from like Louisiana to Texas and doing all these things. I'm just like, you're the coolest person I've ever met. Like, I'm glad you like me. But she, you know, she brings all that experience. And
well, I'm sure you probably both balance each other out, right? Because if you, I don't know, live on the edge every day, sometimes you might be able to just fall. But I just admire that so much. I had the opportunity several years ago, like long story with Cirque du Soleil, but being able to get onto the circle, I forget what it's called, but that stuff is so not easy. And it's so painful, but they're there in all these elegant positions, making it just look so beautiful. And you're like, this hurts. So I really have mad respect for her. In absentia, when you see her, tell her.
I'll let her know. Me too.
But I think that's a great segue into, being able to talk a little bit about your background, because you are, quite accomplished, and you have, I wrote it down because there's also something that we have in common. But, so you have your BFA, not only in film, but animation and video. So really all encompassing. You've already had work that's aired on Hulu and Stars. And then we need to talk a little bit about, before we get back into Gay Haircut, you kind of doing the Liquid Television reboot, because I was associate producer at MTV back in the day when that actually was the first, the original Liquid Television.
Oh my God,
so,
that's cool. Yeah.
I don't know. It was a departure from anything else that had been on television ever. I didn't work on that show, but I actually didn't know that they had done a reboot, and it kind of makes sense. But I just don't feel like MTV has ever been able to kind of find its path or its way in this era as it did, in an era where we were defining as much youth culture as youth culture was defining the channel. You know what I mean? But yeah, Liquid Television, oh my God, back in the day, you didn't know what was going to come out of so-and-so's, the next episode in so-and-so's mind as producers. How was it working on the kind of reboot, if you will?
It was, I would say, without exaggeration, a sacred trust. I think when I was in art school in the 90s, that show was on, and you're like, it just blows my mind that this is on television at all.
Yes. Guys, if anybody's too young to remember this, or didn't, watch it in its, in its prime in the 90s, check this out. I'm sure there's probably some YouTube or something that you could find of it. It just had this very weird, look to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's where, it gave birth to Aeon Flux.
Aeon Flux. So amazing.
Yeah, so, that was one where, I felt so grateful to be entrusted with that brand, and worked with Chris Bernowski and Yvette Kaplan and all the people who had also worked on the original. And, this new generation of animators like Julia Pott and Joe Bennett, and so many people who, have become kind of that next wave of animation. It was the coolest thing. Well, I don't know. I feel so lucky that I've gotten to work on so many things. That
it's really just I don't know, a pop culture classic, because like I said, nothing else has looked like it before or since, really. The original, and now I'm going to be looking up the reboot, because now I'm super curious.
The reboot's all online, and you should watch it. It's really good.
Everybody watch it. But let's there's so much fabulousness to talk about. It's hard to kind of keep focused with you, because you have so many cool things going on. But back to Gay Haircut, which doesn't really have any animation, but has a lot of different moving parts to it. What was some of the more, I guess, challenging scenarios around it, aside from maybe being able to lasso Krista into, maybe, you know what I mean? I just kind of picture her as working with somebody like a Robin Williams in his prime, which was maybe, so creative in so many different ways. Was it like that at all with her, or not really?
It's so funny, because we just we did our last screening on Tuesday, and people were like, "Oh, what were the challenges?" And we were in the Texas Shorts category, because I'm from Texas, and there's so many great films that were so hard to make. And I was like, I have to be totally honest, this was not a challenging film to make, and I've made challenging things before. I think I've described Gay Haircut as Cassavetes meets a Warner Brothers cartoon. That it's we got our family and friends together. It was it's my kid in the inner tube in the first scene. It's my other kid was working the slate, and it was really just, it was in that little window, and one of those little windows in 2021 where you could, get small groups together, and it's let's bite off something that's fun and manageable, and this shoot should be a party, and this should not be a struggle. This is not a battle. We will make those films, but right now we just miss our friends. We miss collaborating creatively. Let's have a good time and get wacky. And, thank God, Krista, I was we're going to do terrible things to you. And she was like, game for it, and we're dumping mayonnaise on her head and glitter and eggs and
Okay, too funny.
trying to set her hair on fire, and she showed up for it. And yeah, she's a very smart comic, so she's got a lot of great manic energy, but she was also so good at, like I'd say cut, and before, I was on set giving my notes, she's like, it'd be funny as if you do this and that, because she's just, I mean, she's done the time on stage in front of audiences and knows how to like bless up any joke.
So it sounds like it was really like a seamless collabo. But do you also think, though, Krista, I mean, maybe you might be a little bit, modest, because if you're, you have an animation background as well, which I always think, I have no idea what that's like, and I draw stick figures. So, but I just think that, I imagine people being very, very patient to bring something to life, like frame by frame. So it seems like, regular humans who animate themselves should probably be a bit easier, right? If you've already tackled that. No, I mean, I think that, you're probably bringing to it a lens which is, way bigger and has maybe dealt with a lot more challenging things. So you think that this was easy, but nothing is usually that easy. I think it's probably your expertise.
No, for sure. But I think, at South by this year, after being away for so long, you've seen these films that these people have. And I was a producer on a film called Bad Axe that was, a very personal film, a very challenging film to make. So, I do want to be respectful of the way that so many people in the last few years have made films truly against all odds. And, no, I have been fortunate enough to really get to learn and practice my craft. So, is it easy to go out and make any film? No, like the odds are against any film ever getting made. But for this one, it's like, I don't like knowing the other films that are at the festival and the odds that they had against them. I stand in deference to those films. And
I see exactly what you mean.
Grateful that we're there to make some jokes and make people laugh between
well, that's actually what I was going to ask, which I typically do is, what do you hope audiences take away from the film? Is it really just to bring some lightheartedness to a time which is, challenging, I think, on many different levels? Or is it more than that, being able to bring voice to an area which is still, emerging and demographic, but do it in a way with humor? I mean, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's funny because it was something I hadn't really thought about until Krista wrote the script. But, I feel like in queer storytelling, we've seen so many coming out stories, and we've seen so many stories of kind of like queer trauma. And there's all these other areas that we haven't really explored. And, this was a small thing, but it's like, like Krista was very kind of visibly queer in her 20s, and then spent her 30s, like, seeming like she was straight, mainly dating men, and then has kind of had this rebrand. I myself came out like pretty late in my life and career. And, of course, coming out is a big deal, and, reckoning with oneself is a big deal. But then there's also just the like, okay, so like, now how do I show up in the world with all the people who knew me as this other thing? And it's goofy and it's silly, and like, you just haven't seen that much of it, And so I think that's part of it, is just like, starting to tell those stories of all the ways that it's just like, anybody else's dumb life of like, awkward things and weird new passages and just being uncomfortable. And that felt like a fun thing to kind of bring people through in a way that's like completely accessible. I mean, I think the biggest compliment at South by was, we were at the closing night party, and, this student who is like the straightest, like, most like film school, like, guy was like fanning out over gay haircut. And I was like, oh yeah, because it's got Zach from Jackass in it. And he's like, oh, that guy's in Jackass? And I'm like, oh, like I literally thought that's why you liked this movie, because I didn't think you'd connect with anything else about it. But I think it's just like, yeah, like, look, we're having fun. Everybody's invited. Everybody's safe. Like, we're going to talk about stuff that we deal with, but, we'll do some physical comedy and keep it silly. So,
I think
anyone can be a part of it.
I think, though, that you're right about the fact that obviously it's funny, but everybody can identify with some kind of way where you're in some kind of setting where maybe you're like kind of having to be a little more fluid or different or something yourself. And if you're able to be honest with yourself about that, then why wouldn't you be able to kind of connect with this film in any way? But I just think it's cool to be able to, add this to the larger narrative, as everybody is saying. Talk to me a little bit about South by, like your experience, like boots on the ground and everything, because it's been, a minute since people were able to go in person. So, it sounds like obviously there was great, kind of response to the film, which is wonderful. What were some of the things that either, you saw or any events or whatever that you went to that you thought were, I don't know, either just helpful to you as a filmmaker or not or whatever?
I think, after, the last time I was at South by was in 2018. And, South by started my career. So many things that are important to me have had some kind of a life at South by, whether it was a premiere screenings there, and so many collaborators and friends from the film community that, I don't know, it was a love fest. It was a week of just remembering everything that's positive and fulfilling about making art and making collaborative art. I was also, again, there with a documentary called Bad Acts. So unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see as many films as I would have liked because I was doing press for 2 movies.
It's always like that, because there's so much going on.
But, there's so many important films there too. And I think, we've all been so isolated that, I think we've all kind of gotten ensconced in our little worlds and our little, things that we get upset about or the things that and there's so much to be upset about and so much to be afraid of in the world, that to see this group of creative people and so many people making important social issue movies and movies that are really about making the world better, that, it was a great reminder of like how good it can be to get a loving group of people together just to spend time celebrating art and life.
That is so nice to hear. What are you going to be working on next, Jude? Is it the kind of thing where like if you tell us you have to kill us, or do you have something out there where, you can talk a little bit about it?
I think my glib answer is anything Krista writes next, I'll do next. I have wonderful bosses at my day job that have been wonderful about like, oh yeah, go do your South by thing and like take the time and support these, side hustle movies. So I'll probably, put in a little extra hours at work, but we're working right now on telling the story and figuring out the best form to tell the story of, Krista and I moving in together and converting part of our house into an Airbnb so we can keep it for I have 2 kids from my previous very straight relationship.
How old are they?
12 and 9. And, this wonderful group of stand-up comics and like queer musicians and like, and suburban straight people have come together to really help us like renovate the house and become Airbnb hosts so we can preserve like normal life for these 2 little boys. And I think it's just such a beautiful and like absolutely ridiculous experience that there has to be.
I can only imagine. Are you going to show like some of the like Airbnb guests as well in this film? And I know they're going to be on a whole nother level. We will definitely have to watch out for that, right, you guys? I can only imagine. Jude, how can we keep up with you best? Now's like the time for you to promo if you'd like. Are you active on any social channels or your own site, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I am active on Instagram as my place online. So I'm at Jude Hope Harris, Hope Harris, and I'm at judehopeharris.com.
Great. Jude, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I just so appreciate you having me here and supporting short films and supporting films in general.
Me too. Thanks so much for taking the time, and I hope you get a little rest in between all the South by activities and then putting in the extra hours at work. Like, don't forget, taking care of you as well, because I have to remind myself of that too.
Oh my gosh, yes. No, my heart is full and my liver is weary. So
Okay, you are too funny.
Self-care now.
Yes, detox. All right. Well, you guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of the Inside series. We have so much more we're going to be bringing you from South by Southwest right here at Filmio, and I am Lauren deLisa Coleman.